Back to school.
And it's been granted for sure. Time stolen has been restored. Good morning. Bonjour, bonjour.
Bonjour, bonjour.
Ça va?
Ça va, merci. Et toi? Why you have me
Bien,
speaking
merci.
French?
Bien, merci.
Mais oui. Qui nouvelle? Comment on est?
So, today I am here with the Soufriere Action Theatre SOT. It's all about Creole Heritage Month. Mwa Ewitaj Kwéyòl.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sibako challenged me actually when I sent that invitation. I wanted to know if we're actually going to be conversating in our.
Ouais, Kwéyòl seulement,
I said, please, mister, do not throw me under the bus. That's going to be quite a challenge for me, for sure. But nonetheless, we're still repping for Creole heritage. I love the beautifully cladded shirts, for sure. Representing, I love the mouchoir. Looks good.
Give thanks and praise.
Yes. So, introduce yourselves as always.
My name is Stephen Joseph, President, Coordinator, Soufriere Action Theatre.
My name is Gabriel Jude. I'm the General Secretary and Treasurer of the Soufriere Action Theatre.
Nice. I know it is the month where your hands are tied, but tell us, in terms of SAT and its presence in the community, and of course, what exactly has been planned for this month?
Well, SAT is not the planning committee for Journée Kwéyòl, but we do have our own involvement within ourselves. We have involvement within the school system. We have, most of us are teachers. Within the school, you do have celebration of Kwéyòl Day. Members of SAT are always on the Creole committee of the schools in which our members find themselves. And so we do communicate among ourselves ideas that can be transmitted to those committees and implemented within the school system. Sometimes we do have work with other institutions that invite us to do some drumming, to do some skits and stuff like that during that period of time. So we do get engaged in the culture that way as well.
Thank you so much. As we look at Creole Heritage Month, again, the emphasis, Mwa Ewitaj Kwéyòl, do you think enough awareness has been raised?
Well, it's interesting. I was checking. It is 41 years since the establishment of Journée Kwéyòl in 1984. And the question you're asking is very relevant because it means that we established Journée Kwéyòl as a festival or a celebration or bringing awareness of the Creole culture and traditions and so on to the general populace. One would have thought that there was a reason driving the persons, the Folk Research Center and others to bring about this observation called Journée Kwéyòl or Mwa Ewitaj Kwéyòl. So it is very necessary, I think, to ponder the question after 41 years, where have we been? What have we accomplished? Are St. Lucians feeling their Creole culture more than before or better than prior to 1984? Because the establishment or the call for the Journée Kwéyòl or Mwa Ewitaj Kwéyòl was about restoration. Restoration of what? Creole culture and tradition. Rejuvenation. Rejuvenation of what? Creole culture and tradition. Rekindling of what? Creole heritage and tradition. So the question you pose is very relevant, and I hope that other people could relate to that question. I have my personal views on that, but that's where we are after 41 years of the observation of Journée Kwéyòl or Mwa Ewitaj Kwéyòl. Where are we? Have we gotten that higher sense of awareness? Are we deeper into our culture? I have my doubts. I think certain things have been accomplished. There is more of appreciation for our cuisine. Moun som ka pi apprécier manger Kwéyòl. Pour adam moun manger Kwéyòl pa te jamais quitter cuisine yo. For some people, the cuisine of Kwéyòl never left their homes. So it's just a matter of highlighting it. But for some people, they had resistance towards it, especially the younger ones. And I think Journée Kwéyòl have brought a deeper appreciation of our cuisine in that light. I will let Brother Jude say some of what he thinks.
To go along with where you are at, Abima Kwéyòl, we see a resurgence of people using African outfits, people using Madras outfits. That was sort of dying out. Yeah? Right now, around this time of year, it's difficult to get Madras cloth. Yeah, because the demand for it goes up. So to some extent, some awareness have been built. However, the levity of the Kwéyòl seem to me to still be faltering. That people see it as an event rather than a continuity, as a levity, as a way of life for them. So they see it as just an event to just celebrate. So that aspect of the awareness has not happened. To some extent it has, but minor. The majority of people still view it as just an event. So for that day, we're going to dress that way, we're going to eat that way, and then we go back to the macaroni and the lasagna.
the living, yeah, that's
So
what it's like.
the
living of
levity.
culture. As you see, you see the Martinicans, the Frenchness. You don't feel the Creoleness, so to speak.
Oui, nous pas voulons vivre Kwéyòl là, nous pas voulons vivre li, mais nous ka célébrer pour un moment. Pour moment ça, nous ka manger Kwéyòl, nous ka habiller Abima Kwéyòl, nous ka essayer parler Kwéyòl, nous ka essayer écouter musique Kwéyòl, nous peut juste essayer danser Kwéyòl. Mais après activité ça là, nous ka oublier que Kwéyòl c'est un mode la vie. Nous pas vivre Kwéyòl là.
Now, same way, and discussions has been raised in terms of not just for the month of October to celebrate, but have it all year round. And again, with that, I beg to ask, how has that been, preserving, Creole heritage?
Well, I'm sure you can answer that question, but since you just want to make us talk about it, well, of course, you can see our attempts at dress. We try to reflect our culture as much as possible in the way we present ourselves. So you'd observe that when SAT performs, that the Madras is an integral part of our outfit. The Afro shirt is an integral part of our outfit. So in that way, we try to say something to the public with regards our Creole levity. Most of us the way we eat, we prefer to eat what is grown in the country. So if I were to go to a restaurant now, I would be telling the person serving me that I do not want any macaroni and cheese, any pasta, any mayonnaise. I want boape, I want makabu, I want dashin, I want fig, the foods that traditionally are part of our heritage, of our cuisine. So we attempt to live that levity. We speak the Creole. We use the Creole in our performances. We use the Creole in our writings. We use the Creole in our songs. So in that way, we try to keep the heritage alive as much as possible. We also do lectures, we do plays, we write poems. We visit your radio station occasionally and have talks with you to encourage people to revisit the culture and to try to live it. So, I mean, that's the form in which we attempt to make our contribution. I'll leave the job door for Steve Ako to talk to.
Well, the masquerade is part of our Creole tradition, you know. So this is something we have been doing over the past 25 years or so. And that's what it is. So by our very practice, we try to highlight, celebrate, manifest in our own way our Creole tradition.
In terms of the young people, how do you get them more involved? I mean, even persons like me would be like, it's a difficult thing. I was raised in the part where was not being taught. I mean, in my household, for sure, though you learn a few things, but then it's like fluency is just not there. You like lost sheep. And for me, I acknowledge the observance of, I mean, October Creole Heritage, but I so dislike, you know, that it puts a lot of pressure on me that I cannot understand.
I think there's a bigger effort now to have the kids write Creole, speak Creole more fluently. I think there's a program that has started piloting. I think it's been piloted in different schools. So that's a very good program in the education system, and we support and applaud it.
You can always give me a contract to teach you to read and write Creole.
That is it too. That is it
so
too.
important.
At a minimal fee, you know.
So, for example,
English is the standard language.
yeah, it is. For example, Mwa Ewitaj Kwéyòl. Why aren't some efforts being made as the kids learn the language, learn to write it? The orality is a little bit easier. So why aren't kids on radio reciting poems in Creole? Even if they are not writing it, there are quite a body of publications of Creole poetry that the teachers at the schools and so on could select and have choral reading competitions of Creole written work. You know, all of that should be part of the vibrations that will encourage the celebration and build and strengthen the younger ones learning the language and expressing themselves in the language.
Now there is this issue of the nomenclature of this thing that we were discussing just before we enter there. That this word Kwéyòl, you know, which is to some extent an ambiguous word in the language, because in the new orthography of the writing, we have called the language Kwéyòl. Now I stick to patois because I prefer the name patois, but some people have the argument that patois is more general and that it refers to a pidgin of any type. Yeah. But I grew up knowing the language as patois. Yeah. When we say Kwéyòl as a name for the language, but Kwéyòl also is the translation of the English Creole to the patois. And so there's the ambiguity as to which one you refer to at the time that you speak, whether you refer to the language or you refer to the Creole. Now, Creole is a mixture. So when you say we have a Creole heritage or Creole culture, we are saying that our culture comes from a mix of other cultures, that there were contributors from several peoples of the world, from several nations, from several groupings towards the formation of that culture. So we have the Amerindians, we have the East Indians, we have the Europeans, we have the Africans. Yeah? So all of these contributed to what today we call our Creole culture, C-R-E-O-L-E, yeah? Which translates to Kwéyòl. Yeah? But the Kwéyòl is also the language. And so people think that when you say Kilti Kwéyòl, that you are only speaking to the language. You are not only speaking to the language. You are speaking to the entire culture. Now, the way the language is written, it permits you to distinguish them maybe by adding the article and adding the la behind it. So if you say Kwéyòl la, then there's no mistaking that you're not speaking of the culture, but you're speaking of the language. But if you just say Kwéyòl as in the theme express, Kwéyòl Sé Fòs Nou. But if I'm to translate that, I will say Creole is our strength, in which case there I'm talking about the mixed culture that we have, and not the language, patois, is our strength. So I thought it was necessary to clarify that because it creates a lot of problems when people speak, not knowing when they are saying one thing and when they are saying the other. So the Kwéyòl as in reference of the language is only one aspect of that Creole culture. Our religions are part of our culture. We have persons who are Buddhist, we have persons who are Muslim, we have persons who are Christian, we have people who are Hindu. So all of that, there are those of us who believe in our African religions, our deities of the Yoruba culture. So all of that is there, all of that is part of the culture. We have the Dalpuri, we have the Kalalu, which are part of the Indian culture that came to us. We have the language, the English language, we have the legal system that is part of the European culture that came to us. You have the coat and tie as formal wear, which is part of the European culture that came to us. We also have the African attire as formal wear, which is part of the African culture that came to us. And all of that is part of what we are celebrating when we say we are celebrating Journée Kwéyòl. So Journée Kwéyòl does not simply mean that you should speak patois. It is that you are celebrating that mixed culture that have become our St. Lucian culture.
Thank you so much for that. What do you think is the biggest challenge, I mean, in terms of keeping the Creole heritage alive, I mean, this present day?
Well, for sure, priority is an issue, because if your resources are scarce, then naturally you have to choose which part of your resource you're going to distribute to what function. So your allocation becomes an issue. And it does not seem that within our state, within our country, that the priority is culture. So scant attention is paid to culture during the Calypso Carnival season and during Journée Kwéyòl. Outside of that, there is barely any attention being paid to the culture. So it's those main events, and the focus seems more to be on tourism than on levity. Now, to me, if we prioritize levity, the tourism comes naturally. When we prioritize the tourism, the levity does not come naturally. So there is a need to prioritize levity. And to do that, some resources must be put into it. I mean, we look at the La Rose, for example, as a case in point. I mean, the struggle you see a La Rose group going through in a séance to try to raise some money to costume the La Rose participants. I mean, in 2025, we should not have been at that level still. There should be something in place that permits those La Rose groups to have sufficient funding to put on this particular aspect of our culture, which is not a profitable activity for them. So there should be some programmed assistance towards getting that done. The same is true of the Jabdewa. But we can see the program assistance for the jazz. We can see the program assistance for the carnival. In the other spheres of the culture, we don't see that prioritization. And I think it's because the orientation is towards the tourism instead of towards the levity.
Yeah, I think you're quite right on that. Priority being a very key aspect. We are not, we said it early on, we are not emphasizing the levity, the actual living of the Creole culture. Another area I think is socialization. Why is it we are inundated during October month with Creole music? What happens in January to December? Why aren't we not always hearing, to a greater extent, Creole music?
It's not
The
prioritized.
quadrille and all of that is not prioritized. So the socialization that will bring about the acceptance or the further practice or full enjoyment is not there.
There's
Alright,
a quote
so-
there that right down the alley of what you're saying by Anderson Reynolds from the Jaco special publication for the 25th independence of 2005. And it reads that way. In this era of globalization, the ubiquitous mass media and the information superhighway, it is easy for the cultures of small societies like St. Lucia to be swept away and replaced by the cultures of larger, richer, and more dominant societies. Which is the same that they're saying. It's not prioritized. So the mass media therefore finds a slot to fill. And they do a marvelous job at filling in that slot.
Yeah, this is why our children will be able to run you some songs by in the other genres than to sing you a Creole song. They only learn Creole songs around October when they're getting ready for Junior Creole at the schools.
Or if it have enough smut in it.
Or the ones that have the smuts, that's the one they will think. So that's what I mean by socialization. Is right on, and it is a challenge. It is a challenge when it comes to mass media and so on. So where is our programming? Where is our programming that will help us make the Creole culture always present? That's the question.
Which is true. And we have to call on the relevant entities for sure, to.
As you mentioned, the
shift these
relevant
dynamics.
entities, I made a note of that while the brother was speaking. For example, an agency like the Cultural Development Foundation, I have big problems with them people, all right? Because they are too much concerned about the grandiose festival. And they are not realizing, to a certain degree, they are killing the very culture that they say they want to highlight in that big festival. And the Laos is a case in point. They are taking the people away from all of the communities for a big festivals, usually somewhere in the north. And like my brother said, that does not much to do with the levity. It has to do with the tourism and how they prioritize. What they are not realizing is that they are taking away the cultural practice from the community. Because when these people are there, some of the groups, they have to give up the grand dance, because then the festival becomes the grand dance. They no longer have the resources to prepare for the grand dance. And the grand dance is an occasion for the communal in the Laos. The community comes together in celebration, and they have the Buido do Bue and so on. So that is a celebration of community. But they want to make it a big like festival of Laos group. And it's problematic for me, because I am seeing the damage it has done. And my friend who was a leader of a Laos group, the Mabebe Laos group in Sozel, may soul rest in peace, he passed away. And he was always pissed off with the CDF for doing that. And he was also lamenting to me that they were putting pressure on the little resources that they had, because they were only catering for transportation. At the time, I do not know how they have improved on that, but that was the situation at the time. But I want to send this message here via this medium to the Cultural Development Foundation, that preserving culture is not only about the big festivals and the big events. It's about giving the people the necessary support in their communities to practice the cultural traditions, to ensure their survival, to sustain them. All right, and that is one of the ways that we could ensure that the young are brought in to the practice of any of the cultural traditions, the lawas, the flower festivals, the masquerade, and others.
To an extent, this is equally true for the Journée Kwéyòl activity itself. You know, that this big activity in one or two communities, creating this massive traffic jam all the time, that you can't really even get there most of the time to see what is on display. It's the same thing. This focus on the big show instead of allowing the communities to do the things within the communities and keep the culture sustained within the communities.
Which is true. I agree. We have Smith Jean-Philippe, respect due my brothers. Sheldon Lionel, the Creole culture is changing and evolving. Do you think we will be able to save some of the old Creole traditions? Roasted potatoes, breadfruit sardines, now we fry them. Rafik Alexis, facts. Marcia Osborne, say it loud, brother. And Rafik did say, if we invest in our people, our culture, and our livity, that will spark creativity, and in turn, our tourism product will flourish.
Yeah, well, again, as I said, scarcity is a major issue there, because the economics of this thing is a bit difficult. I mean, you go to a restaurant, you ask for a meal. They barely want to slice the dashin that they put by your plate. You can barely see the slice because dashin is expensive. Potato is expensive. You understand? So a holistic approach must be undertaken in order that you can promote the Creole cuisine, so to speak, on island.
Miss one. The lamoui that was Malawi food, Malawi salaison has become.
Yeah, well, everything that was Malawi have been commercialized big time and taken away from the Malawi. The teasel, we saw the same thing happen with the teasel. Poor people started roasting teasel as a livity, and the entrenched businesses just absorbed it away from them. Now Zell is more expensive than the chicken itself. Yeah, so this type of thing is an issue at bay as well. So somebody who is cooking food for sale to make a profit does not want to give you a plate of dashin makabu and banan, because the plantain is expensive, the dashin is expensive, the potato is expensive. So they want to give you a little slice of that and give you a plate full with macaroni, because the macaroni is cheap. It fills the plate very easily. Yeah. So that's one of the things. So an encouragement for us to produce and consume what we eat, so that there is enough production to bring down the price, would probably help in that scenario that the gentleman raised of the patatoti and these things. I don't think that the reason is that people don't want to eat patatoti. I think it has become economically an expensive product to present.
No, but even with the frost being made from various agencies as well, buy what you grow and eat what you grow as well, it is something that can change the dynamic there. So not necessarily saying that maybe the dashi or the potato, those things are costly, but then if it's coming from your backyard itself and you're growing it, to me, it should cushion that.
Well, you must have a very big backyard if your intention is to plant dashin and potato, because one little bed of dashin is not going to help you much when you have to wait 7-8 months for it. I mean, that would work a little better for the potato that's a 3-month crop or something like lettuce and these things. Dashin have a longer wait period. A backyard is not, I mean, it helps. Yeah? Anything that can sustain and reduce the costs to what you consume is going to help. But there needs to be incentive to bring down the cost of farming, so that the price of these foods can go down, and then you can encourage people to eat more of it.
Aussi, on va garder dedans, c'est qui ça qui a fait environnement nous, parce que nous avons un chat manger nous ni problème. Un chat manger nous ni problème. Mon pas ça c'est scientist agricole là. Ça dit nous côté ça qui ça qui a fait un pays parce qu'un chat manger nous ni un chat problème. All right? A lot of our food that we produce is now suffering with major diseases and things like
I
that.
think the insecticides.
Yeah, some of it that we don't fully understand what's going on. So that is another, for me, that's another area that we might have to give some attention. And having said that, there's a lot of good things happening. People trying, there's a lot of good things that are being tried. Like, I wasn't at the Dashing Festival thing, but I was impressed with the intention is, what the objectives are, you know. So these are efforts that are necessary to help out in this thing. The thing about eat what you grow and grow what you eat and so on. This is a buzzword for many years now, you know. When do we achieve this? At what point do we get to a place where we say, St. Lucians have really gotten the message?
Yeah, because you see, there isn't a sustained program to ensure that it takes root. That you come on TV or on radio and talk about it once or twice is not what is going to create the change. You might reach 1 or 2 persons, but you won't reach the majority. You understand? There needs to be some sort of a sustained program. We must also take into consideration that those major corporate entities that are out to take over the role of feeding the world, that they are also involved in a lot of nefarious activities to destroy crops and prevent small countries from feeding themselves. Do not for a moment think that some of the things that happen to our crop are happening naturally. People may say it's conspiracy theory, but I mean, it's something to think about, that these big companies producing all the genetically altered crops and using all the chemicals and forcing all this chemical agriculture onto us and spraying all kinds of things. You know, I do remember when they attempted to destroy the Cuban banana plantations while I was still a student in Cuba, and there was video evidence of planes flying over and spraying this thing over the corridor to destroy the plantation. So there is that concerted effort by corporate entities that want to make the money off of feeding the world, to be the ones to provide your food. But of course, the provision of your food also means that they control you, because they can do like the Israelis are currently doing to the Palestinians. They can starve you into obedience. Yeah? So we have to look at it in those dimensions as well.
I agree. And if we were to say, in terms of Creole Heritage Month, is not just a day or the month itself, and it's overall the food, the dance, tradition, you know, everything that symbolizes who we are as a people. As much as sometimes and even if we were to speak of, I mean, in terms of the mode of dressing, what we see now, I mean, a lot of it has changed in terms of, yes, you're wearing the madras, but then in terms of the designs and all that, that's not what it used to be back then.
No.
We see
Well,
less of a covering.
Yeah, well, we have to take note of the difference between cultural heritage and culture. If you're saying heritage, you are now saying what you received from those who went before, which is what we refer to as tradition. But culture on its own is a dynamic concept, and it will change. You want to preserve some aspects of your culture, which becomes then your heritage. But all of your heritage is not going to be preserved, because, I mean, you have to move with the times. Otherwise, you're going to disappear from the surface of the earth. There is no way around that. If you fail to adjust and make the changes, you will disappear, because the world is going to continue moving on, and it will move on without you. Yeah. So let's not mix the heritage aspect with the culture generally, that you want to preserve certain things that identify you as a people and that helps sustain you in the midst of all the chaos of the modern levity. But the dynamism is going to be there, and aspects of the modern levity will eventually become part of how you live, which is what the culture is, the way of life. Yeah? So the culture will change as we move along.
And in terms of the clothing, there's some wonderful things happening. The designers have gone amazingly creative with the madras and stuff. Even in a simple thing like t-shirt printing, there is some amazing things happening in this area as well. So all of that is part of the dynamism of the culture itself. Yeah.
Okay. If we were to look at us as a people and how we've been heavily influencing the music, as much as we speak of the Creole dialect and the music, but some of the songs, they're not so sold into the air. The lyrics themselves, the kids are even forced to listen, and then we see some behavioral patterns coming out of that as well. So I think under that whole umbrella of the Creole music and that sort of thing, it doesn't send out a positive message.
I want to go back to the word that the brother used earlier in our discussion, priority. Who are the persons bombarding our young with the smart and slutty lyrics songs on the airwaves?
Content control. You cannot tell artists what to write.
Yes, but as a DJ, you could control what you play. As a radio host, you could control what music you send out there. I cannot control what you play at your home, but in terms of mass media and so on, government can legislate in certain ways that could help in this situation. You do not hear the good Creole songs. We have good, great Creole songs. When last you've heard Future Lights, that song by Kevin, La Vie Cherche Tout Bonnement?
I haven't heard it for a while.
For a very long time, I've not heard this song on the airwaves. You know, we had some great songs. And I'm just focusing only in St. Lucia there right now. What you often hear are the ones you call not too pleasing to the ear. And again, it's priority. The DJs on the radio stations, the programmers, and so on and so on. They have to make some good decisions.
You see, the focus is on the commercialization of the station. You want your station to be popular at a time when most of your listeners are young people. And the young people are oriented to this type of music. But it doesn't mean that you have to give them...
How did the orientation come about?
Yeah, but it doesn't mean you have to give them 100% airtime of this thing. I mean, you're listening to a radio station and somebody plays one of those songs. And then you hear 9, 10, 11, 12 of them, just one after the other, non-stop. You know, and nothing else. I mean, I saw the same happen to groups like Vibes Cartel. I mean, a lot of people are surprised if you tell them Vibes Cartel have conscious songs. Yeah. They don't play them. Yeah. They only play those that put forward the aggression and the violence. Yeah. Those that put forward the conscious lyrics are not played, but they are there. Yeah. So the DJ is in a position to have a lot of influence on what is happening to his or her listeners. I mean, some sort of a formula can be worked out as to what quantum of each type of music you play. But the focus seems just to be on whatever brings the direct satisfaction, the immediate gratification to the group of young. And everybody else is not catered for.
Yeah, apart from the Jukebox program, I don't think there's any other station that plays folk songs or quadrille music.
And the quadrille music have disappeared from the
out of Mwa Ewitaj Kwéyòl, out of Mwa Ewitaj Kwéyòl. You have, you know, yeah, but he said probably disappeared. But now I'm happy because I see a move in the north where there are different quadrille dancing programs and sessions happening. I think what's his name, Jason.
The North always had it, you know, from the days of the Seklissi. there was always some people who managed to hold on to it and attempt to train young people to keep the traditional dances alive in the north. It's a good thing, but there is no funding for them in the south.
Yeah.
Outside of the north, it becomes very difficult. I remember when I got involved in quadrille dancing with Soufriere Action Theatre, that myself and UCB Ajabatis, that we went to the SSC in the gardens at the time to learn some of the quadrille dancing. That's a little difficult for you to have to travel up and down Castries to do it. But the funding for this type of programs is where the priority should be focused.
Yeah, which is true. Even with that, permit me to ask, in what ways, does the theatre, collaborate again to keep such traditions minus the displays that we see happening? And I keep coming across a video on Facebook in terms of that presentation with Helen's daughters as well. That speaks volume.
You're talking of the recent
Yes.
program at
Yes.
Project Chocolat?
Yeah, and even those things could be tied in as part of the observances as well for Journée Creole, I believe as well, and maybe have more sensitization because people
My
don't
sister,
take too lightly. Apart from the month of October for Creole, nobody really cares per se,
my sister, and to a certain degree as well, those of us involved in the work, the practitioners, the artists, people don't want to pay. They want you to labor, but they do not want to pay. When you give, so for example, Bank of St. Lucia would call us to maybe do a session for them outside of the bank as the customers come, and we will perform maybe the masquerade or do a drumming session. And sometimes the money you ask them, they think it is too much. And so what happens? The show does not take place. There is not that aspect of the culture being exhibited. People do not share in it, and so on. But one must not always expect the artists and the practitioners to be the ones always making the sacrifice, because we are already making the big sacrifice as practitioners, always engaging in the tradition or in the cultural form, practicing it out, bringing it out there, and to see any little sustenance from it is being made difficult. I saw recently the government put out some the creative industries they'll be giving out monies for if you apply. So they are not aware that there are organizations around that have been there for many years that are doing certain work that they need to give some subventions to continue that work. All right. These are the things when you think about it, if you're not strong or if you do not understand your purpose and why you're doing what you're doing as an artist or a practitioner, you might just give up. Because the persons in authority who are supposed to have the ideas and so on do not see the need to say, hey, this group has been here for 40 years doing this practicing this particular cultural form, keeping it alive. We don't need them to write any proposal to us. We don't need them to ask for this $5,000 or $10,000. What we need to get our officers to them on the ground and have a discussion with them and discuss with them what can be done or what could continue to be done for the next year or 2 years. Or if the agency have a particular focus, say, for example, they want to ensure that masquerade is alive in, say, primary schools. And Soufriere Action Theatre is given the resources and the means to work through these 2 years with school children on that. You understand what I'm saying? So it is good to look at these things when you see these kind of things coming on, to look at them and to try to clarify for yourself, not for everybody else, but for yourself as a practitioner and an artist, what is it all about?
Also, there is the misunderstanding of the artist's effort, because the public only sees the event. So you put up an event today, 1 hour, 2 hours, that's what the public sees. And people think, well, that's the work. Yeah. But behind the scenes, you have to prepare a script, which means that you have to sit, you have to brainstorm, you have to research, you have to put the script together, you have to cast it, you have to do the rehearsals. So you are indoors for months upon months, working for you to make that presentation. That's 2 hours. And then somebody thinks that if you ask for compensation, that they should only see the 2 hours. But when you decided to hire that group, you knew that they had to go and prepare, they had to rehearse, they had to cast, they had to do all of that. They have to prepare props, they may have to do costumes, all of that. There's a cost to all of that. Yeah. But nobody wants to understand that that cost is there. Surprisingly, they understand it for foreign artists. So you bring in a foreign artist for the same 2 hours. You provide him lodgement, you provide entertainment for him, you provide transportation for him to move around, okay? You pay him. So all of that is there in the package for that artist. But for the local artist, who's asking for a pittance, you still want to cut down that pittance. Or people call you and they tell you, we'd like you to do that. We don't have a budget for it. And you say, but I don't understand. You don't have a budget. Why is that included in your plan? You know, why when you sat to plan, you included the hard work of an artist in that plan. And then when you approach that artist, your first words are that, I don't have a budget. But if you don't have a budget, you should make a plan that does not include that activity. You know? So the volunteerism is always for the local artists. But if there is pay, those persons who are called upon to volunteer, they're nowhere wrong. Nobody sees them. They only see them when there is need for volunteering. When there is a means to assist them to sustain and fortify themselves and strengthen themselves to survive the next bout, they are left out.
Which is always true and the case. Sheldon, if there's nothing to add at that moment, Sheldon, is country music part of our culture, or are we making it part of our culture?
Well, it is a part of our culture.
It is now.
Not now. It has been for quite some time. I mean,
where is it now?
I grew up.
You said
I grew up in the 60s, knowing country and Western music as an integral part of the culture. Music Mwa Ewitaj Kwéyòl. It was there. Okay. Yeah, it has always been there. And two, historically, if we look at
what is the terminology, music Mwa Ewitaj Kwéyòl? Why?
Well, that's how the elders used to refer to it.
Yeah, he's correct. That's been there long time. I know myself,
never
I know
long. I mean, when you were going by Lina, this was always there. Yeah. Now, I lost my train of thought. Yes. If you make the connection with the African aspect of our livity in the Americas, but most of the early Western singers, they were black men, you know. Somebody decided to whiten them and decided that the cowboys must always be portrayed as white men. But they were black. So that's a part of our history that they attempted to steal, you know. Now, the country music was more white, you know. This stumpy music was more white, but the Western was black, you know. Now, look at it from the definition of culture that we explored earlier, because we went into that, the dynamism of the culture, that what was the culture in the 1800s and what is the culture today are not the same. But there are aspects from the 1800s that you felt were important enough that you preserved it, it became part of your tradition, part of your heritage. So it remains an ongoing part of your culture. But not everything from that era remained. Yeah? I grew up hearing stories of if a young man wanted to get married, that the family from which the bride would come would require that that young man is able to split a piece of wood they call laurier cannel, which is a very hard wood, that you'd be able to split that piece of wood to show that you had the wherewithal to be able to economically provide for that bride if you end up marrying the bride. If you fail at splitting that wood, you will not be given the bride. I mean, but do we do that today? No, that culture has changed because the economics that is required for somebody to feed his family may not require the person to be involved in chopping a piece of log, in doing this type of very hard work. There are other ways of earning a living, and the culture would have to adjust to persons who earn their living in those other ways. Yeah? So there is some level of dynamism in the culture, so that the Western, which came in from the North Americans, eventually became a part of our culture. The quadrille, which came in from the Europeans, eventually became an integral part of our culture, and so on and so forth. The dalpuri that came from the Indians, which became popularized through the Rastafarian movement, became an integral part of our culture. Yeah? So that culture is going to continue to evolve, and new things will join the culture. Some of these old things we will feel, this is a necessary thing, we must keep it, we must preserve it. That will become part of our tradition and our heritage. Some we will release as we go along. We will not keep. Yeah.
And so also, as we moved from the flabo, the candle, and the lamp, and we got electricity and so on, you began hearing less of sukuyon, jagage, bolong, and mama glow, and things like that. That's what it is. That's what it is.
Okay. With SAT and its mission, its mandate, whatnot, there were a lot of places of history in Soufriere. And our young persons, and maybe even myself, not too familiar with. It was just yesterday, you were supposed to have been part of that meeting yesterday, and then we were trying to find out the whole story with Flo Bagaya, whatnot.
Flo Gaya.
Flo Bogaya, whatever.
Bois.
Gaya.
Like wood.
Yeah, and even with the story that's not the same, but also there was a story where, the slave was beheaded and all those different things. If we go around, we would see, there was a shrine, there was the old jail, or a lot of different places that I am not even aware about, and that's right there in Soufriere. So I think maybe programs or theatrical presentations, more or less. It needs to get out there, to foster that awareness among our young people, among the community, and even on that large scale, as we get to observe Journée Kwéyòl, for persons to know, in Soufriere, did you know, whatever. And you'll drum it out for the skits, for different things.
Well, but again, priority. Look, there was the Heritage Sunday program.
It's on SAT to do that.
No, it's not. It's not on SAT.
And maybe
it's not on SAT. That's a wrong way of looking at it.
Reach out to persons that can support the cause through the schools, through organizations.
SAT makes a contribution, and how far that contribution can go depends on what resources are available to SAT to carry out that. Yeah, because like everybody else, the members of SAT must economically provide for themselves and for their families, and they have a life that they must live as well. Their life is not just that aspect of their livity. There are other aspects of their livity. And this aspect of their livity is a grand sacrifice. because the resources to do it are so meager that sometimes our own pockets have to be used to get some things done. Now, there was that Heritage Sunday program that had been set up through the foundation. That was a very good program for promoting these very things that you are talking about. Yeah. But what happened? Somebody decided of their whims and fancies that because SAD had performed twice in that program, that SAD had performed 2 Sundays, that, oh, SAD was the only group benefiting from that program. And they trashed the program, a program that was funded at the time still at $15,000 in its kitty to be funded. The program got trashed. Yeah. So these type of things happen. Now, $500 for a performance for a group that was carrying out a summer program, okay, for a group that needed drums to train children, okay, for a group that was doing voluntary work for Soleil Couché, Soleil Levé, and all of these other activities that they were calling us for. Somebody found that $500 was too much money for that group to have. And because of $500 that was paid twice to a group, if the maths works right, it's $1,000. They destroyed a program. Yeah. So these things are happening, right? Now, you spoke to SAT in regards to bringing these programs alive. So if we decide we want a theater piece about Flobwagaya, where do we host it?
The St. Isidore's Hall.
You see, well, that's what I mean. There is no space. There is no theater space.
The town square.
Okay. There is no theater space. Now, the space you are talking about may be conducive to certain type of production.
Yeah, not all
A
space
popular
needs work.
theater piece, something like that may work there. A conventional theater piece, that's not the space. Okay. Now we've been advocating for the creation of theater space for the longest while. And I recall that at our last sitting here, that I mentioned again that it is a recurring element of the cultural part of the strategic program towards 2040, that the report of which still has not been presented. Yeah? But the cultural committee did present its report. And repeatedly, the need for space is in there. And I reiterate that now that the old town hall has been demolished with the intention of building a new structure there, I am appealing again for the creation of a proper theater space in this structure, because there is no reason why Soufriere should not have a space, maybe to us on a smaller scale, but similar version to what exists as a cultural center in Castries. There's no reason why you should not have that here. There are a lot of young people in Soufriere that are interested in that type of activity, that are interested in theater, blah, blah. They've come together as groups. They have tried. But every time they try, they fail. And eventually the groups split apart. Because a group comes together, they put together a production. You host it at Moncubarel, but Moncubarel wants $3,000 to $4,000 for the use of their space. Yeah. If you charge $50 per head for the program, let's assume you make $7,000 to $8,000. You pay Moncubarel $4,000. You have $4,000. If you share it among these young people, what is left in the kitty? How does that group sustain itself? It doesn't work. So there is need for community theater spaces, for groups like that to be allowed to develop and sustain themselves. If they do manage to become big corporate entities, then they can create their own space. But that nurturing needs to be given. And the space is a major aspect of that. Resources. If you don't prioritize and put resources, the work cannot get done. Some aspects of it will happen by persons who are internally motivated, who sacrifice their time to attempt to get it happen. And I recall Miss Marie in that regard, who have sacrificed years of her life attempting to keep the flower festivals alive. What resources are given to her that she can bring it to the standard that she wants to bring it to? There's no resource being given to her. This thing that each time you're doing something, you have to go and do up some begging, you know, for things that there are institutions of government that have budgets to carry out those activities. But somehow the money doesn't trickle down to the groups that are doing the practice on the ground. That is where we have to look at. The problem is how the structures work.
And to add to what he's saying, we have left footprints, you know. Some other things you were saying there that we should be doing, we have done. We have done. Our summer program was about that. We took our children to Washington. We were the ones that popularized Frobagaya.
Together with Albert Ditterville.
Albert Ditterville.
Aldex Center.
We were the ones when we had Open University at the square to celebrate emancipation and so on. What were we doing? Our whole programming have been about education of our people on our history and our culture. Throughout these many years, that's what we have been doing. All right. The tours that we took with our children was historical about Soufriere, knowing Soufriere. So we have done these things, but he have said that. I don't want to repeat it. Let's just move on to something else. Yeah, we
there can't be continuity when they don't have resources.
I like,
because in our youth when we did that, Stivago, the responsibilities we now have, we didn't have. Yeah?
yes.
So I could take 3/4 of my salary and put it into this program to sustain ourselves, and all of us could have made certain contributions and get things done. I mean, we were up at 6 o'clock in the morning carrying wood to build a tent on the square to carry out that program. Then break it down and carry the wood back after the session.
Yeah. These days, the events committee, they get tents
of thousands of dollars
paid for.
Yeah. So
right?
you get a tent.
Yes.
You
But nowadays we have to build that
so
from
now
scratch.
there is resources that make the thing move.
With 2x4s and galvanized and coconut palms and bamboo, you know. So we've been there. We've been there. I'm looking for something to read there to you, know, because
continue to stay the course. That's what I will say. Encourage the organization. Do not give up. For sure, continue to preserve the heritage as much as you can. You know, there's support.
These are important words, as much as you can, because
Yes.
you can't give what you
As
don't
much-
have.
as
That's
much as you
just
can.
the
But
situation.
do not despair. You know,
No,
that's
we-
the most important.
We are not despairing. If we were despairing, we would have abandoned this
Long
track
time.
for a long time. You know, we're not despairing. I mean, Soufriere Action Theatre from 1985. So
And
this is a lot of years.
understanding,
you
yes,
know.
there were organizations that are solely responsible for the upkeep financially, but I still believe that you can apply for the grant because it's there, it's made available. Though you feel the need that there are processes that doesn't require, but
Well, you see, the moment you say
For what
apply,
it's worth.
you set your conditions as to
Yeah, you should just-
what you want people to apply for. But if what you're asking me to, what I want is not what you're asking to apply for, why should I apply?
I mean, for
You understand?
longevity,
I want theater space,
sustainability.
and you say apply for a lecture. Why would I apply? Because you set the conditions for your application, right? It's just, let me give an example of what I'm saying. You file for your taxes. Government keeps your money for 3-4 years. They tell you, for you to get it guaranteed, you must have an emergency. But they tell you what the emergencies are. You must be at hospital, you must have a surgery, somebody must be going to university. So if that's not your emergency, how do you get, what sense is there in applying?
Mhm.
Because they set the conditions. So yes, they offered. Well, there are some people that will benefit from it because it meets their needs. If it doesn't meet my need, there's no sense in applying because it doesn't meet the need that I have.
Here is, I want to share that with you. Here is what, because our people don't read, so I want to share it with you. Dr. Anderson Reynolds, in his book, The Promised Land, which is, he said it is the first book in a series that he'll be writing, Chronicles of Vieux Fort. And he's observing in this writing, he's observing what is happening in Vieux Fort. And by extension, I think St. Lucia. He says, it's a strange thing. Now, that's the sentence that opened that paragraph. That's interesting. It's a strange thing. There are individuals and entities in various communities who for years have kept their communities alive, whether in sports, culture, environmental beautification and preservation, at great personal sacrifice, expending their own resources. But when government programs, resources come along, instead of putting these programs and resources in the hands of those community paragons who over the years have developed expertise in the activities in question, they are given to the party hacks and supporters as reward for their loyalty, but who may have little expertise and genuine interest in the area of endeavor. What happens after? What happens after the money runs out of the party loses the power? These favored party supporters exit the stage, and the task of keeping the community alive falls back to the community paragons like Soufriere Action Theatre, now weakened and demoralized. And now Soufriere Action Theatre is, I put that in, not Dr. Anderson. All right? And the task of keeping the community alive falls back on the community paragons, now weakened and demoralized. And in parenthesis, he says, I am even suspicious that certain government grant facilities ostensibly established to support deserved or merited practitioners and to advance targeted activities actually function to give handouts to party supporters. Everybody that I have sent this to have said to me, Dr. Anderson, Dr. Reynolds is right on point. Because you know why? They have had personal experiences in their communities where this is the reality.
But listen to this, Sivako. It seems that we are on Dr. Reynolds today. The document that I read from earlier, which is an excerpt from the JACO, was entitled The Development of St. Lucian Culture by Dr. Anderson Reynolds. And here's what he had to say about the same CDF. The CDF has a role to play. And he says, the Department of Culture, renamed the Cultural Development Foundation, CDF, was established to do just that. According to the CDF, its role is to create conditions conducive to the enrichment of St. Lucian cultural environment and to encourage, facilitate, and promote cultural development and cultural events. The CDF hopes to accomplish this through training, advocacy, and effective administration. However, a common problem with institutions set up to promote culture is that the institutions themselves quickly acquire the notion, or, in brackets, at the very least behave that way, that culture is all about them, the institution, and that they are the paragons of the culture. They are the creators of culture. But if not the CDF, who creates culture? He's asking. And he answers, who among us are actively engaged in giving artistic expression to St. Lucian culture? They are the people and the groups creating the cultural product. I am talking about the writers, poets, musicians, calypsonians, painters, actors, etc., etc. Yeah. The very same thing that Sivako is saying. Yeah. That instead of dealing with these people on the ground who are actually producing the culture, sustaining the culture, preserving the culture, and developing the culture, the institution itself starts to think of itself as the creator of the culture, as the owners of the culture, as the paragons of the culture. Praises to Dr. Anderson.
Yeah, good observation. On point. Your audience, how are they reacting? Your audience, read us some of their comments.
Yeah, well, it's been read, everything so far. With the last one, is the country music part of our culture? Are we making it part of our culture?
Okay.
That was like the last of the comments. I am yet to see be steadfast, in whatever you do. For sure, do not be discouraged. Again, I want to implore, and as much as I don't want to say a lot of these acts are selfish or born out of greed, but then I certainly believe that there needs to be a lot of reflection. There need to be a lot of dialogue as well too, and I feel maybe saddened to an extent how, I mean, the outlook in terms of how SAT is being viewed, and I think a lot of appreciation is not being given with the mention of so many programs that has taken flight, and sadly to lack to the poor inadequacy of maybe finances, resources, manpower, whatnot, that they have sadly faded. I do not want it to ever come that point in time, like Mr. Jude made mention, with having some of our cultures wiped off the face of the earth. I do not want that to ever happen for the Soufriere Theatre. I think there needs to be a continuity plan, if anything. Um, Here I am going to ask you, minus all the noise, how do you all think moving forward would be in terms of the continued work?
Well, we have already.
Remove all the noise and who's not assisting and who's doing that. And
I think the cultural committee program answers that question very well.
Yeah.
It's a well laid out
you go
strategic
back
plan.
to that.
Yes,
sir.
No, but that's
yeah,
important.
It is.
It
It
is
is. I mean,
important.
look, this thing gave me sleepless nights. And I made the comment as well that I don't understand sometimes why people get involved in things that they don't take the work to heart. And if I get involved in something, I want to put all my energies into it. And when people stall my energy, I tend to step aside because I don't know how to work that way. Okay. So I'll be sleeping and I'm solving issues in my head, which means that I'm not having a restful sleep in order to put out what ought to go out, because that's what thinkers do. They think. So if the thinker does the thinking and present the results of his thinking, then they're supposed to be the implementers. So why are the implementers not doing their part? Are we doing like what happens on the political campaigns, that somebody comes and says, oh, you said that, and because you said that, you were the one that had to do it? Because some people are thinkers, some are critics, and some must be implementers. So let the critic, let the thinker think, and let the implementers implement. The one group cannot do all. So if I already sat, did the thinking, did the writing, and did the presentation, I mean, you're going to come with a club to my head for me to go and do the implementation? When the resources are not given to me, it is given to certain institutions to do it, and those institutions are there. They must get it done.
So in simpler terms, the brother is telling you that we have presented a cultural policy for Soufriere, mandated by the district rep. So that's about the continuity that you speak of. For us, from our little window, and I wanted to say that before I started, let me tell you something. You know why we are still alive? This group is still alive? Because we are godly. All those who try to make us look like we are devils, we are godly. That's why we stand predominant. We are godly. And I want them to know that, and I'm saying it loud and clear. Soufriere Action Theatre have been able to sustain itself and survive because we are godly. When we formed this group in 1980, it came out of a deep consciousness of African people. And so despite all the noise, they cannot destroy that spirit. So that's clear. But we are trying. We come across a group of young people who express a desire, a joy, and a pleasure in doing the masquerade and being in, around, and being part of Soufriere Action Theatre. Every Saturday, religiously, we meet with them to sustain their interest, to develop their skills, and to coach them in a way to make them wonderful men and women. That's about continuity. And that is what we have been doing for all these years, and we continue to do regardless. And we give thanks to the creative principle for having allowed us to survive all of these years. Some of the things that have happened within the group has been miraculous. I want to point out that in order for things to happen in a community, in a district, in a constituency, there must be effective and genuine leadership. Hypocrisy will not make it work. It is genuine, effective leadership that will make it work. Leaders who can bring people together to say, this is what we want to achieve. We are going to work towards this particular objective for the next 3 years. You people are the ones with the expertise. Let's get this thing going. Through this 3-year period, we will be committing ourselves to A, B, and C. We want you to commit yourself to 1, 2, 3. That's what leaders do. So if you want the community to be sustained, if you want the vibrations to feed upon itself and so on, you need leadership. Genuine, effective leadership. And I must say, SAT is a paragon of effective, genuine leadership, because when one leader left or 2 leaders left, there were always leaders to sustain the group, because we were not always there. I was a founding member of Soufriere Action Theater. I left. I lived in Canada for 11 years. There were still leaders. I came back and I'm still in leadership of the group. People have left and come back and do what they had to do at the time they were there. UCBR, AMAB. So I want to point that out. Effective, genuine, I want to stress it, genuine leadership is what the community needs. Soufriere has a soul of culture. Soufriere is supposed now to have Lawas groups, dancing troops, cordial groups. The culture is supposed to be vibrant in Soufriere. But there is an evil force, I think, that is causing vibration not to work in the manner it is supposed to work. Because I know the Soufriere I knew, the Soufriere of yesteryear, was a vibrant community in all social dimensions. Whether it's culture, whether it's theater, dance, sports, visual arts, Soufriere was vibrant. Right? We had costume designers in the person of Boswell, Bones, Cephas Ras. We had our own people doing our own things. So we could develop Soufriere. We could make Soufriere more interesting, but we need the leadership to do that. And so SAT has done, and it continues to do, within its given circumstances. And our brother here have always tell us, fellas, don't beat yourselves up. Applaud yourself, knowing that you have done your best within your given circumstance. And we are contented to do that, because it's important for us to do that, pat each other on the back and say, we are doing what we can.
Permit me to ask questions raised in the past. Do you feel at any point in time whether in any shape or form that you all are being politicized?
Well, we don't feel, we know we are being politicized. I mean, we have spoken about it on several occasions. If you have a UWP administration in office, we are branded SLP. If you have an SLP administration in office, we are branded UWP. Why it is done, remains a mystery to us, because...
What sense of this?
I don't know it, because it doesn't make any sense to us, since the group have never declared itself affiliated to any political party. Because this is a group where individual members have their own political affiliations. So how do I tell a member within my group who affiliates with the SLP that the group must be a UWP group? How do I tell a member who affiliates with the United Workers' Party that the group must be an SLP group? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. That's a recipe for the destruction of a group. So the group does not affiliate itself to any political party. That's one of the reasons why even when we are offered contractual work to drum and stuff like that at major partisan political events, we turn it down. We don't want the association with any of the political sides in that regard. If an individual member wants to go and do that, he can take a drum and go and do that. Soufriere Action Theatre as a group does not do that because we have seen the divisiveness of the politics in such a small country. So we are not a political group. I myself don't have political affiliations. I don't even perform the franchise. I don't exercise it. Okay. So the group does not lean one way or the other. What individual members do, it is their right, the constitutional right, to support whichever party they wish to. Okay. We as a group, we do not affiliate with political parties. We do not discuss partisan political activities. Yes, we discuss politics. Yes, we take decisions on the basis of politics because politics is about power and governance. And we must involve in the power and governance of our country. That's why we come on the radio and we talk. It is our right to do so. But the partisan politics, we do not involve. And we do wish and hope that those who paint us in colors will desist. Because we don't affiliate with any color, not as a group. If you wish to paint a particular individual with a color, that is your problem. But please do not paint the group with any color because the group is not affiliated to any political party.
Get that right for persons who perhaps would have had that notion, the thinking. And I know Mr. Stilmarco can be pretty stern, you know, with certain decisions and would ignite, you know, flames for sure, you know, calling a spade a spade.
Yeah, you see, because sometimes people ask for opinions, but they don't really want an opinion. What they want is for you to say what they think. But I'm not in your head. I do not know what you are thinking unless you express it. I know what I am thinking. And I assume if you call for an opinion, it is my opinion you want. You don't want me to come and give your opinion. You can do that pretty well yourself. But persons ask for opinions, but they don't want opinions. And it saddens, but I have taken the decision that a lot of times that I'm called to focus group meetings and town hall meetings and these things to just not go. Because I have concluded over the very many times that I have done that, that when you do make a contribution, that you are being objective, it hurts certain people and you become an enemy. Because they really did not want an opinion. What they wanted was an endorsement of their own opinion. And in a small society like ours, we need to move away from that. Everybody cannot have the same opinion. If everybody has the same opinion, there can be no development. Development requires diversity of opinion.
True. We have an interesting comment. Nadia Kazabo, good afternoon to you. I think one solution to restoring culture in Soufriere is to restore the community groups, CYO, Basco, Wasin, etc. How were these groups formed? Those who benefited from the groups did not continue as leaders to keep the groups running.
Well, part of that statement is true. The whole of it is not true. Because I know persons who have made tremendous efforts to revive those groups and try to keep them going. I can recall people like Hilary Charlemagne. I can recall Marcella's Pai, past commissioner, ex-commissioner of police. Errol, yes.
Errol Alexander.
Yeah, Errol Alexander. There are persons who have made the effort. But how long can one person sustain the effort? You know, because as you have more responsibilities within your own life, as you age, you can take on less than you were able to take on before. So some persons have made the effort.
And perhaps these groups were not was not as godly as Soufriere Action Theatre because they did not survive.
That may be so. Let's hope that was not the
No,
case.
but again, it doesn't have to be these groups like CYO and Basque.
It doesn't have to exist in the same form.
Yeah, so
new groups can.
But what's happening?
Yeah.
There is, as far as I know, there is a Palmist club or group. Are they only based in sports? I don't know. I do not know. I know there are some groups. I've heard names of some groups. But then again, I want to ask a question. What is the present disposition of the Soufriere Youth and Sports Council? Because I remember when I was a leader in the Soufriere Youth and Sports Council, that was part of our mission to ensure the survival of organizations. Because the Soufriere Youth and Sports Council cannot exist without organizations. They come, they come out. Body. Yes, they come out. The Youth and Sports Council comes out of the clubs. So if there are no clubs, how does the Youth and Sports Council exist?
There is a major problem, Sivako, that, again, I'll go back to it. Space. If you are going to have clubs, you need club space. There was a time in Soufriere that you knew Market Road had that space. You knew Bombay had a club space in that house. You knew Fourbennier had a club space. Palmis had a club space. Those spaces have disappeared and they've not been replaced. So what you see happening is teams meeting, play a sport, and then disappear. They don't really meet as a club because there isn't club space to allow them to carry out other activities within the setup of that space. So when they meet, it's just as a team. They go, they play a match, and they disperse. If they had club space, even after a match, they would probably not disperse. They would go to the club space where other activities can unfold. So space is important to keep any club alive. You need space because they have to meet somewhere. And if they don't have a space where they can meet regularly, it becomes a problem.
3 minutes moving up to the hour of 12
to
the hour of 1 p.m. Insufficient
You've
solution.
left me without lunch.
Caribbean, that's all of us. Nadia, I do agree some groups attempted restarting, but they were short-lived. We have sports clubs, in fact, not even sports clubs, football clubs, not youth groups. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, none of those groups existed.
Well, she's saying exactly what we're saying, no?
Yes.
That you need space in order for these things to work. Mothers and fathers group existed because they had a space. You know,
well,
when the space was taken from them, so too did the groups get destroyed. Because where do you meet?
Okay, well, let's just anticipate with the development of that human resource center, you know, the transformation of the old town hall, that we will bear fruits. And
well, I don't know what the plans are. That's why I'm doing my own advocacy with regards to what I would like to see in it. But I don't know what the plans are. I haven't seen any plan. Can I make a request?
Yes, you can.
There is a reggae song, Never Get the Riri Yet. I would like for you to play that song when we end. That's my request. I don't remember the exact artist, but
I don't know what that is.
Well, you talk to your DJ.
No problem at all. I just want to ask, in terms of ending the discussion, how can we continue, to preserve our heritage, even with the part that SAT is playing, even for Creole Heritage Month? Let's just place the emphasis on Creole Heritage Month, like Mwa Ewitaj Kwéyòl, like this October. How in
well, I think you're repeating a question.
Way, how can we?
I think you're repeating a question. You have changed the words, but the question remains the same. So the answer will remain the same, that there is a cultural policy for Soufriere, which says what our ideas are in terms of the way forward to preserve and develop culture in Soufriere. Of course, I do think that some of what is in there can be extended to the nation with regards to Mwa Ewitaj Kwéyòl and blah blah. But I think this document does a very good job in terms of giving a way forward. And so I would refer everybody to that document.
Mr. Joseph.
No, I'm good. There's nothing much to add to this.
Well, with that, your final comments.
Kwéyòl là, c'est un joli cadeau, il doux qu'on doudou mwen. Hey! Kwéyòl là, c'est un joli cadeau, il doux qu'on doudou mwen. Hey! Kwéyòl là, c'est un joli cadeau, il doux qu'on doudou mwen. Les tchè mwen blessé, ek mwen en la peine, mwen ni pou ache soulagement, en langue maman mwen. Hey! Kwéyòl là, c'est un joli cadeau, il doux qu'on doudou mwen. Hey! Kwéyòl là, c'est un joli cadeau, il doux qu'on doudou. Les tchè mwen blessé, ek mwen en la peine, mwen ni pou assez soulagement, en langue maman mwen. Hey! Kwéyòl là, c'est un joli cadeau, il doux qu'on doudou mwen. Yeah! Kwéyòl là, c'est un joli cadeau, il doux qu'on doudou mwen. Les tchè mwen blessé, ek mwen vle direction, mwen ni pou ache direction, en langue maman mwen. Kwéyòl là, c'est un joli cadeau, il doux qu'on doudou mwen. Hey! Kwéyòl là, c'est un joli cadeau, il doux qu'on doudou mwen. Hey! Kwéyòl là, c'est un joli cadeau, il doux qu'on doudou mwen.
Nice. Sonia is putting you all to work. Isn't that document online? And even with her question, I will just ask, where can people follow your activities or watch your upcoming performances? I know there is a Soufriere Theatre pages.
Well, it depends on what performances. There are performances that we do that the work does not belong to us because we may have been compensated for the work. And in that case, it is the owner of the work that will decide what to do with the work. What work is ours should be found on the Soufriere Theatre site, because we do upload anything that we do so that it is available to the public.
Definitely. And Sonia's question, isn't that document online?
Sonia, I cannot tell you that this document is online. However, I do have a copy of that document, so I can make that available to you. However, the idea was that this document would be incorporated into the complete strategic program towards 2040. The report for that strategic program I have asked for and I have not received. My understanding is that it's not completed. I don't know what time limit will be required for its completion, so I will not make any pronouncements here on that. But when it is completed, you should be able to get a copy from the Soufriere Foundation, and the Creole, the Cultural Committee report will be in it. But if you want that report on its own, I do have a copy that I can make a copy available to you, digitized.
Hope that answers your question. To all those of you who sent in your comments as well, we want to say thank you so much for that. A minute to the hour of 1 p.m. in Soufriere St. Lucia, of course, the Eastern Caribbean. This has been SAT, Soufriere Theatre, Creole Heritage Month. Much was shared here today, and some enlightenment for me, of course. And I know Mr. Steve Akwo is waiting to test and try me for that lang mama no, is it? Yes, for sure. At our next session, definitely I will be conversating a little, with our dialect. Until next week, Thursday, God's willing, it's been a pleasure. House guest for the 9th of October 2025. Gabriel Jude, Steve Akwo Joseph, Soufriere Theatre, we're out.
Thank you.
You asked for more live and relevant talk shows, and we heard